Okay. Can everybody hear me properly? Can I get a thumbs
Yes.
up?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So let me share my screen and we can get started.
Michael,
Yes.
is the Minecraft server?
All right. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So then if you can see my screen, then you'll know what we're going to be talking about today. Today, we're going to be talking about Napoleon Bonaparte. So can anybody tell me what they know about Napoleon Bonaparte? Does anybody know
He
anything
was
about
a
him?
great emperor.
Oh, interesting. So you think he's a great emperor? All right. Oops, sorry. Does anybody have any other? Does anybody have any other to say about him? Anything else? Does anybody know anything? Nope. Well, I guess this is great because you'll be learning a lot about Napoleon today. All right. So let's start off by talking about Napoleon's life. So as Jasper has said, Napoleon was this great emperor. So what was his life like before he became this emperor? Well, I can tell you, Napoleon wasn't born as an emperor, so he wasn't royalty. Napoleon was born in 1769 in a town called Ajaccio in a small island called Corsica. So he is going to become the French emperor, but he was not even born in France. He was born in a really small island near the coast of Italy called Ajaccio, Corsica. And when Napoleon was born, his given name, so the name given to him by his parents, is called Napoleon Bonaparte. So this name, of course, it doesn't. Oh, sorry, I spelled this wrong. So this name seems really Italian. It doesn't really seem French. But in the year that he was born, in 1769, French troops came onto this island and conquered the island and took the island into France's name. So because of this, the island that was supposed to be more Italian became all of a sudden French. Because of this large change, instead of learning Italian and about Italy and working for Italy, now Napoleon is more inclined to help the French and learn France because that is what people speak within his island now because of this French ruling. So, as I said, Napoleon started studying about France and French. And because of this, he can't really have an Italian name, right? Because that would make him seem more as an outsider. It makes him seem less French. So what happened is that he changed his name into Napoleon. So the spelling is similar, but he changed his name into Napoleon Bonaparte. And by adding this little accent on the E, it makes his name seem more French because he didn't want to be discriminated against or segregated because he wasn't actually French. So in his early life, he was actually mocked because of his French accent. He didn't have a proper French accent because he wasn't actually from Paris or France. So that is a reason why he changed his name. So his actual birth name is not the name that we know him by. It's actually a different, more Italian name. All right, let's move on to more of his life. So when he was 10 10 years old, in 1779, he joined the Royal Military School. And this military school is in a place called Brienne in France. This is the school where he really started getting really interested in military and fighting and things like that. And within 5 years, he moved to join a school called École Militaire. So this was 5 years later. So this will be in 1784. All right. Does anybody here learn French in school?
I do.
Would anybody know what École Militaire means in English? Because this is French.
It means military school.
That's correct. Thank you, Jasper. So of course, French is kind of weird. They flip things around. So école means school, militaire means military. So in 1784, he was enrolled or joined the military school of France, one of the best military schools in France. So it was basically training to help or join the French army. Napoleon was actually a really, really smart person. He graduated almost top of his class and became the second in rank lieutenant in the artillery. So he became the second lieutenant of the artillery. Does anybody know what the artillery is within an army? Would anybody know? Or what are they in charge of? What does the artillery do?
They're in charge of cannons and explosives.
That's correct. Great job. So what are artillery? Well, they are the people or the group of people that are in charge of long range. So anything that shoots above the battlefield to hit the enemy. And these are usually long range cannons because there weren't really missiles back in 1700s, 1800s. So Napoleon Bonaparte, for his first basically job, was in charge of a group of people that shot long range cannons and a lot of artillery or bomb shells. Harvey, do you have a question?
Were any of those weapons called the mortar?
Good question. Yes. So a mortar was a type of cannon. It was capable of shooting really long range bombs or basically these iron balls that can hit really long range and far away and then explode and damage the enemy. They could be able to damage the enemies from really far away without harming themselves. So the enemies can't shoot you, but because I have these long-range mortars or cannons, I'm able to hit the enemies.
Which probably look like this. Do they look something similar to this?
Yes, that's correct. So they were what they usually were these really large tubes that pointed straight up into the sky.
Is a bazooka also an artillery?
Bazooka is something different.
Then what is it called?
Bazookas are actually really late in the game. So sorry, this is a bit shorter, but then usually you put the cannon or the shell in there and you'll be able to shoot really far away and hit the enemies.
Is there by any chance somebody set the shell on fire?
Sorry. That was setting the shell on fire?
No, or just made a shell that would light on fire.
Good question. So that is not really a strategy that people use in the later days. when because these shells would explode by themselves when they hit somebody, right? So they don't need a fire because the explosion will cause a fire. But before this era of gunpowder and these long-range cannons, people did light a large stone ball on fire and throw it using slingshots at the enemies.
I have a question. How do they even light a stone ball on fire?
Yeah. So what they do is they have to find something that is flammable. I'll write that down.
Like paper.
Yes, that's correct. That is something flammable, but they need something that can burn for a longer period of time and burn
Wax and then
much
the
easily.
Wax?
And because wax doesn't burn. It's the when you have a candle. When you have a candle, the wax doesn't burn. It's the wick that burns. So wax actually doesn't burn.
I know this really weird chemical that is really crazy.
Yeah,
it basically nothing could also trigger it. So nobody knows when it might go on fire.
Yeah, but they didn't have that technology or chemicals back then. So what did they do? Well, when they need to use flammable balls, they cover these huge stone bricks or these huge stone boulders with alcohol or gasoline. Those two are things that you can find in the nature and that are really, really flammable. So they would cover these stone boulders with alcohol and light it on fire and throw it at the enemy to maybe set them on fire. But because this is in the 1800s, those strategies are long gone because they already have gunpowder that can blow up and cause the same amount of damage. All right. Any other questions that we have? Yes, Harvey, last question.
Why not just use a bottle filled with like the alcohol and then, or just a normal alcohol and then stick some like paper in it and then light on fire, throw at enemies.
Mm-hmm. So that is called a Molotov when you do that. And that is something that is not really powerful because you can't really have a large impact. It's so small for the bottle. Plus, you can't really throw a bottle that far, right? If you throw a bottle too fast, it will break, blow up in the air in front of you, kill yourself. But if you can use like a big boulder, you can be able to throw these things really far distance without them shattering and be able to do damage to the enemy, to the enemies, and also light them on fire. So yeah, great question. So Molotovs were actually used in combat, but usually short range, not the long range we're talking about.
But why not just use like what's it called again? Oh, like very dangerous acid that, and then you put it in. It has to be a glass bottle.
Yes, because it's a glass bottle. When you throw it really fast, the glass will shatter and it won't be effective.
No, you don't throw it very fast. You just throw it at medium.
No, but it won't reach if you don't throw it fast enough. When you get older, you'll learn something called physics. And within physics, for something to go far, you need it to go fast. And if it's not fast enough, it wouldn't reach as far. So it has to go a certain speed.
Then why not just use like a very small pellet covered with inside which has like flammable things and then shoot it at the enemy base.
That is called a bullet. And we only invented that in the and they had that too.
No, so, I mean but the bullet is on fire.
That is not possible because the fire will be put out at that speed.
No, it won't.
Right.
You just use a slingshot.
And again, the slingshots won't reach. All right. So those are a lot of questions. I'm sorry if there was a bit of delay there, but we'll be moving on to the next page. All right. So during Bonaparte's time within the academy, the military school, there was something really big that was happening. Well, what was that? That was the French Revolution. I talked about the French Revolution in a previous class, But does anybody know anything about the French Revolution they would like to tell me? Any facts? Any interesting details that you know about it? Or maybe even who was in charge or when? No? Okay, so let's start from the beginning. The French Revolution starts in 1789 with a very famous action. It was called the storming of the Bastille.
The Bastille used to be a castle and a prison.
Good job. Great answer, Jasper. So, the Bastille. Why did they have to storm this castle / prison? Well, first of all, they freed a dozen people from the prison. There wasn't a lot of people actually there for the prison, but a very important thing that was kept in this Bastille was weapons. They
Yeah,
kept
I
a
was just
lot of
about
weapons in the Bastille. So what really happened is that they really needed these weapons to arm themselves to have a revolution. So that's why they stormed the Bastille first.
yeah, that was what
And-
I was thinking of.
Yeah, so then we have to kind of tie this back to the revolution and Napoleon, right? So the revolution was happening during the time when Napoleon was still training for the military. So he had to pick a side. He can either help the monarchs, the royalty, or he can help the revolutionaries or the people who are leading the revolution. And Napoleon chose to help the revolution or supported the revolution. So yeah, because he graduated from the military school, he is actually a very competent or good fighter. So he helped the French revolutionaries in a lot of ways within the coming years. So after they stormed the Bastille, they want to overthrow the monarch. So what did they do next? Well, they stormed the castle of Versailles. And yeah, they stormed the castle of Versailles to kick the king and queen out. And what happened is that they declared officially in 1792 that the monarch was overthrown. So they got thrown out. And who declared this? Well, there is this party called the French Legislative Assembly. So they used to work with the monarch, with the king and queen, to make rules for the country. But because they think that the monarch got so corrupt, they actually didn't listen to the monarch anymore and then kicked them out and declared France as a republic. Does anybody know what a republic is? Let's see. Harvey, do you have an answer? Harvey.
People who have the rights to do things they want.
A rebellion?
Great guess. Good guess too, Jasper. So let me say my sentence again. The French Legislative Assembly kicked out the monarchs and made France a republic. So if you make a country something, what are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to establish a new government. So the republic is a new type of government. And this government is governed by the people. Because the word republic comes from ancient Latin with two words, res publica. So, which translates to of the public. So, which means that this new type of government was ruled by the people. And yeah, in 1792, French declared a republic, so they don't need the king and queen or any of the monarchies anymore. Any questions about that? Nope. All right. So we keep continuing on our story about the French Revolution. In January of 1793, the king and the queen were beheaded or guillotined, so got their heads chopped off. Does anybody know who the king and who the queen was that got beheaded?
Was it
Does it have to
King
be
Louis XVI?
Good job. Great. And who was the queen at the time?
Elizabeth?
No, Elizabeth was the Queen of England, not France. She had a very famous line called "Let them eat cake." Would anybody know who this queen was?
Mary Antoinette.
Yes, very close. Good job, Jasper. The name of the queen was called Mary Antoinette, and she was the princess of a different country, Austria, and she married over to the king of France, Louis XVI. And both of them, unfortunately, got beheaded because of one person. This person was called Robespierre. He was French.
Oh,
And
he also got beheaded.
Yes, that's correct, but that was later on. So, who was Robespierre? Well, he was a revolutionary.
Terrorist.
Yes, he was. People believe that he was kind of a terrorist, but at the start, he was a core revolutionist. He believed in the French Revolution a lot. So what happened? Well, he really, really despised the monarchy, and he wanted power. So what do you do when you want power? Well, you kill off everybody else who has power. So during the year 1793 to 1794, within that 1 year, Robespierre, with his power and with his control over the new government, the Republic, he guillotined or killed 17,000 people and arrested 300,000 people. So he killed 17,000 people within a year. How many beheadings was that per day? That is a crazy large amount of people because he was so paranoid that his power was going to be stolen away from him. But because of this mass killing, not a lot of people liked him. This period of time within France was called the Reign of Terror because of how many people were arrested and killed. But fortunately, Robespierre's reign of terror ended in 1794 when he was arrested and also beheaded because people got fed up with him killing so many people. All right. I know that was kind of grim, so let me tell you a fun fact. The person that invented this beheading is actually called Joseph Ignace Guillotine. So this beheading guillotine is named after him. And he invented this at the start of the French Revolution in 1789 as a way to kill people humanely. So this invention is actually really new, and it got used so much during the French Revolution. All right. Harvey, you have a question?
I thought we were going to talk about the emus.
Yes, but that is, sorry, Harvey, but that is a topic for another time because there's not a lot we can talk about the emus.
Can we just watch a video of the emus?
You can go watch a video in your own time if you're really interested in the emu wars in Australia. So let's continue on with the French right now because this is a very, very important part of history. As I said, Robespierre was arrested in 1794, and he was beheaded. At the same time, Napoleon was actually out battling the royalists, so the people who still believed in the monarch. So they were still fighting back against the revolutionists and against the new government. Napoleon won that battle and actually got a lot of praise from people because he secured the position of this new government. And he had some fame in France because of this. So he was actually pretty famous. And in 1795, a new constitution was drafted in France. And this gave power again to an executive branch of people, the directory or the committee. So a committee of 5 people that had the power to rule over the country, kind of like the Senate in nowadays. What happens is that Napoleon actually became the advisor for this directory as a military for military matters, because he had the fame for it. And with this establishment of this new directory, it marks the end of this monarchy. All right, that was a lot of information. So does anybody have any questions about the French Revolution and Napoleon's role in it? Yes, Harvey?
What were those? What are those things that look like a gun and a sword?
Good question.
Is it called a musket?
Sorry?
Is it called a musket?
No, it is not called a musket. A musket is actually, do you see the person using the gun, the shorter gun? Let me draw it out for you. This is called a musket. So a musket is a pretty short barrel gun. And it is actually...
like...
What is this picture?
Sorry. So this is a very famous picture that was painted during the French Revolution, and it marked and it's one of the most famous pictures that kind of just explains the French Revolution in one picture.
Yeah, I think the like musket looks like the double barrel shotgun.
Yes, that's correct. It is very like that. But you were asking about the knife on the knife on the gun, right?
Yeah.
So
a bayonet.
Great. It's called a bayonet. So it's basically just a word describing a gun with a knife or a sword at the front of it. So this way they can shoot from afar and also stab people at short range. So they can protect themselves from long range and also in short ranges.
Then is that a revolver next to the other person?
Yes, that is. All right. So
What
with
is
all of
this
that,
stone?
we'll be talking about that. So we talked about how Napoleon was deemed a hero. He got famous because he helped defend this new government, the Directory, so the committee of 5 people. So what happens? Well, he becomes the commander-in-chief of the French army. So he becomes basically the head of the French army. And well, because he is the head of the French army, he gets to control this army as he sees fit. So whatever he wants to do with them. So in 1796, he started to battle against Austria. And he actually defeated Austrian forces, or the army of Austria, to gain land for France. So this made him even more popular to French people because, wow, this Napoleon, he can do almost everything. He defeated the royalists, so the monarchs, and he also defeated the Austrians and helped France gain more land and expand. And because he was on this streak of winning a lot of wars, he decided to start another war. In 1798, he started his campaign, or his long plan of war, to conquer Egypt.
Or the whole entire Europe?
Yes, but we are starting with Egypt. So he started with Egypt first. This was before he got a lot of power. He was only a military commander, or the head of the army at this point. So why Egypt, you say? It's a place that is full of deserts. There's not a lot of resources. So why do they want Egypt? Well, it is crucial for one thing. It is very important for England and other countries to get through the canals in Egypt to pass to Asia. specifically India to trade. So by owning Egypt, the French and Napoleon can block off the trade of England, forcing England to move off India. This way, England loses a very critical part of their country, India, which supplied them with a lot of these natural raw resources. So Egypt was very important. That's why he started a campaign or war against Egypt. And during this war, 1 year later, in 1799, one of his Frenchmen in his army discovered a stone, which became one of the most important artifacts in the world. Does anybody know what this stone is called?
Can you repeat your question, please?
Sure. What is this stone? It's also on the screen. What is this stone called?
The famed stone.
No. So, does anybody know what famed means? Harvey?
Well, very. Famed stone. It's
The famed stone just means the famous stone. So that's not actually the name of it. The name of the stone that is really, really important for historians right now is actually called the Rosetta Stone. This stone. Let's see. The Rosetta Stone. So, why is this stone so important? Well, this Rosetta Stone, is actually a decree. So on this stone was actually carved a decree of a king, of a really old past king. A decree was just a note from the king to the people in his country. And on this decree contained 3 languages. One in hieroglyphics, one in ancient Egyptian, 3 in ancient Greek. So I'll highlight all of the parts for you guys. The first part is in hieroglyphics. The second part is in ancient Egyptian. So hieroglyphics is a type of Egyptian language, but it was usually used using small pictures that describe certain words. And that was only used if you're really powerful and you have within the country. So people or regular people in Egypt usually used in the ancient times used ancient Egyptian instead of hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics were for people that had power or really well educated. And the third language down here was called ancient Greek. And why is this stone so important? Well, people back then didn't know anything about hieroglyphics or ancient Egyptian. They didn't know anything about it. So because nobody spoke or even write ancient Egyptian and hieroglyphics. But fortunately, there's still a lot of people that read and write ancient Greek. So by able to understanding because they understand this ancient Greek, and because all 3 parts of this decree or letter is the same, so basically repeated 3 times in different languages, and because they can understand the ancient Greek part of it, they're able to translate both of these 2 because they're exactly the same way. So because of this stone, historians of the world was able to understand hieroglyphics and ancient Egyptian, which is a really, really important step because this means that they were able to explore other parts of Egypt with this knowledge. All right, so we talked about the stone. Let's get back to Napoleon. So what happened to his conquer of Egypt? Unfortunately, in 1799, after he discovered this stone, he was defeated by the British who were trying to protect Egypt because, as I said, Egypt was a really important piece of land to Britain. And because they lost, they had to give up the stone to England, and that is where it is now. It is sat in the the British Museum, where they still keep this Rosetta Stone to examine it. All right. With all of that, let's move on to the second part of this slide: Napoleon's rise to power. After his failed conquer, he came back to France and he was defeated. He felt sad because he lost a really big war, a very important war. So what he did was he overthrew the Directory, or the new government. Big turn of events. He overthrew the government and formed this new government called the Consulate. And because because of his control over this new government, Consulate, he was established as the first consul. So what does the first consul mean? Well, that means he was the head of the government, head of state, and had control over the entire country. But as this kind of almost semi-dictator, how does he establish power within the country or within the government? Well, he needs the support of a group of people. So this group of people that he chose was the Catholic Church. During the reign of the monarch didn't really like the Catholic Church. They really butted heads because they had power. Both of them wanted more power. But because of Napoleon and his negotiation, he signed a treaty in 1801 with the Catholic Church. Which gave the Catholic Church more power back and established this really close connection between the government and the church. This helped him secure his position as the head of state, because now the Catholic Church likes Napoleon and wants to back him and keep him in power. With all of this support, and because he was such a great general and a lot of French people liked him, he actually became consul for life. So basically, he became the head of the state, so head of France, for the rest of his life. Which you think? Well, he says this is a more democratic government, right? Because he's not a dictator. But does this sound like something that is free and democratic if somebody can rule for life? Not really, right? So yes, of course. This consul for life, established in 1802, is the start on his journey to become the first emperor of France. A little bit of side note to those of you guys who enjoy United States history or British history. This is the point in 1803, before he became emperor, Napoleon made a very important decision. We can't really tell if it's good or bad, because it was good for Napoleon at the time. This decision he made was actually overseas. In 1803, Napoleon sold Louisiana to the United States. Louisiana is a very important part of United States because France also had colonies over in North America. But unfortunately, due to money being tight, because he fights a lot of wars, and his inability to be there to control that state, he was forced to sell it to United States. Yeah, that was just a bit of a side note. All right, that was also a lot of information. So I'll open this conversation right now up to questions. Does anybody have any questions for me? Nope. Was that all clear? Yep. All right. So we talked about how Napoleon is rising to power. He found this really important stone, and he wants to become the emperor. So what's next? Well, of course, he becomes the first emperor of the French Empire by establishing himself as the emperor in 1804. So he was coronated or said to become the emperor in 1804. Because of this sudden move, the other countries are scared because by declaring himself emperor, he just get absolute power over this country. He can do anything he wants and nobody can stop him. So a lot of other countries that border France were really, really scared. So they created the Anti-French Alliance. Oops, I spelled this wrong. This Anti-French Alliance consisted mostly of 3 countries. First was Austria. Then we had Russia. Last but not least, we have Britain. These 3 countries all border France and are also superpowers, so they are also really powerful. So they were really scared that Napoleon, one of the most brilliant emperors at the time, and also a very brilliant general for war tactics, was now an absolute monarchist. So he had absolute rule over France. So what Austria, Russia, and Britain did was they created this anti-French alliance to stop France from advancing and expanding their empire. Unfortunately, this doesn't really go well because, well, Napoleon was really brilliant. So in 1807, he defeated the Tsar of Russia. The Tsar meaning the king of Russia, which gave him most land in Russia because the Tsar at that time controlled a lot of land and a lot of power. So by defeating the Tsar, he gained so much power that he controlled most of Europe at this time. But because the Tsar, even though after he got defeated and signed a treaty saying that we want peace, the Tsar or the king of Russia broke that peace. So Napoleon was really pissed. He was really angry. What does he do? Well, he invades Russia. And as any of you guys that watch Crash Course History know, or watch any history sites, the one thing that you shouldn't do is invade Russia.
Yeah, he got pushed back and he had to retreat.
That's correct. So, what happens? Well, because the Tsar or the Emperor of Russia betrayed Napoleon in the treaties and did not listen, Napoleon started invading Russia. But because Russia is so large, it takes him so long to actually get to Moscow and get to the center of Russia. And during Russia's retreat, as Napoleon pushes up, the Russians burn all of their buildings. And because they burn all of their things, the Napoleonic troops, or the troops led by Napoleon, wasn't able to loot anything. So they got no supplies along the way. So by almost the end of the stretch of their crossing of Russia, they were down on food. They had no food, no supplies, and everybody was frozen to death because it became winter in Russia, which is really, really detrimental. So they started this war all the way from in 1807, as I said, and this ended in 1812 when he finally reaches Moscow. So for those who don't know, Moscow is the capital of Russia. So if you capture Moscow, basically you capture the capital or the most important city of Russia. But the Tsar or the Emperor of Russia did something really unthinkable. He burned down Moscow so Napoleon couldn't get any supplies or anywhere to shelter their troops. Because of this, Napoleon had no more supplies. He couldn't resupply because they were so deep into Russia. And the Tsar didn't surrender. So the Emperor, Napoleon, was forced to retreat. And this kind of confirmed that even one of the most brilliant generals on the battlefield can't even conquer Russia. So that's why Russia cannot. That is where the saying that Russia cannot be invaded started. All right.
Just like the Germans tried to invade Russia in World War II.
Yes, that's correct. So let's go on with a bit more history about this emperor. 1 year later, in 1813, Napoleon was in a battle with the Allies again, because, well, as I said, they had this anti-France alliance that they want to keep their France from expanding. Well, but Napoleon doesn't want that. He wants to continue to expand his really large empire. And unfortunately, in 1813, Napoleon actually lost. In 1813, there was a battle called the Battle of Leipzig. And Napoleon lost this battle to the Allies. And because this war was so detrimental, Napoleon lost all of the troops that he had left after his invasion of Moscow. Because of the invasion of Moscow, he lost a lot of troops. He lost 70% of his troops. And even after the Battle of Leipzig, he had no troops left. Everything was gone. The supplies, the troops, the resources, all of them were completely gone. And because of this, 1 year later, in 1814, he realized he couldn't hold his position anymore. He had to surrender. So, in that year, Napoleon abdicated the throne. Which means that Napoleon gave up his power, and the Allies took over and established a new monarch within France. And Napoleon, because he abdicated and he got defeated, he was exiled. He didn't get killed, he got exiled. So he was banished or exiled to a small island called Elba.
Because
yes, Chopper.
Because if some people kill him, his supporters will get angry and will like rebel or something.
Yes, that's correct. So they knew that Napoleon was still really dear to the hearts of France. So if they want to control France, they can't kill off their once emperor. So what they did is instead of killing them and executing him, they banished him to a place called Elba, which is a really small island in the middle of Mediterranean. But after a year, in 1815, Napoleon actually escaped.
And rise to power again.
Yes, that's correct. So after a whole year, Napoleon escaped from this island, and was able to take back power and take the French throne again. And this period of time is very famous, and it's called Les 100 Jours. So anybody that takes France, would you like to raise your hand and maybe if you know, maybe raise your hand and tell me what that means in English? Would anybody know? Les 100 Jours. Camille?
The 100 days?
Correct. Perfect. Yes. So the period that made him famous is the Les 100 Jours in French, or the 100 days. So what this means is that within 100 days of him coming back from his exile, or after he escaped, within 100 days, he was able to establish himself as the emperor again. And in this period, he was able to kick out the new king of France that the Allies put into France to stabilize the country, and was able to establish himself as the emperor again. All right. Any questions about this? Any questions about Napoleon? Nope. Oh, Harvey, I see a question.
Can we watch a video now? I saw you said we were going to watch a video today.
We might be able to watch a video, but all of the videos on this topic is really, really, really hard. So that is something that I don't think you guys would understand if I played a video. That's why I have to go slowly through everything. and explain it to you guys.
That's okay.
All right. So, last of all, we just had the emperor get back into power. So what happens? Well, he is in power, but he is very, very afraid of people taking the power again. Why? Well, he just kind of stole somebody's position and just said and just took back his position, which is really scary to the Allies. But he was also really scared of the Allies attacking France again because he just came to power. So what does he do? Well, he launches a war against the Allies in anticipation of the Allies trying to fight back against him. And this was the very famous Battle of Waterloo. What happens? Well, the Battle of Waterloo was fought in Belgium. And it was the last war for Napoleon. During this war, he made a lot of critical mistakes. He made really bad plays and used really bad strategies when fighting. And he lost so many troops. He lost mostly all of his troops and wasn't able to recover. And this marked the end war for Napoleon. And because of this but because of this battle, he was forced to abdicate really swiftly. So 4 days after his defeat at the Battle of Waterloo, he was forced to abdicate his throne again. This time, he was exiled to St. Helena. A place near the west coast of Africa, and he had to remain there for the rest of his life. And this, because the Allies are afraid that he's going to escape again, this small island, which was surrounded by large mountains, was patrolled 24/7, so 7 days, 24 hours. Every second of the time he was on the island was patrolled by British troops, 2 battalions, so a few hundred people guarding this one person. That should give you a thought of how strong and how impressive Napoleon's leading strategies were. He was a really great leader, and he was a really great military strategist. And the British people were really afraid of him. That's why they had so many people look and try to control him to that one island. And in 1821, Napoleon died on St. Helena at the age of 51. He died most likely from stomach cancer, but people and scientists right now don't know exactly. Yes, Jasper?
There's a theory that he might be poisoned.
Yes, that's correct. There's also a theory that got poisoned, but that is probably not correct because nobody lives in the island with them. The troops weren't able to contact with them, so nobody really knows where the poison comes from. If us actually,
doesn't he have a servant for him?
He did. Yes, he did have a servant. So he had he was actually living pretty lavishly. So he was actually pretty well off on the island. But yeah, there's no way to get the poison to him because nothing can come in and out without the British control. So to end this off, we're going to talk about an expression that we have right now, and it's called "met his Waterloo." What does that mean? What does "met his Waterloo" mean? Well, this is an expression based thanks to Napoleon, and this expression is called "met his Waterloo" because it means that this person has suffered his decisive or final defeat or setback. So this is the final defeat, and he can never come back to it. Come back from this defeat. That's why it's called "met his Waterloo." Just like Napoleon, because of the defeat in Waterloo, he was never able to recover. All right. That is all of the information I have. So does anybody have any questions about what we talked about today? Yes, Harvey?
Can we please just watch a little part of the Emu Wars?
If you're really interested in Emu Wars, you can watch it by yourself or after this class, right? So if nobody has any questions, we are going to be we're going to go right into one last point about Napoleon, because that is all of the words. So we talked about so many bad things about Napoleon. He had a lot of, it was war torn. He was really ambitious. He wanted a lot of land, a lot of power. But what was good about Napoleon? Why was he remembered so deeply? Well, he was actually a pretty good person. Instead of focusing on a lot of things, he focused on three main things: education, science, and new laws. Education was really high on Napoleon's priorities. He thinks that that education is really important, that everybody should be educated. He created a system called the lycée, or if all of you guys who take French, lycée means high school. So he created this governmental high school, so free education for anybody of France. With that, he also prioritized science. He was a strong believer of science. He believed science can fix any problem. So he invested a lot of money into new teachers, new schools, so that future scientific development will boom. And last, he was the first person to create economic laws. So laws about trading and economic, so to increase the standard of living for people of France. So remember those three things. Why was Bonaparte good to, why did people of France really like Bonaparte? Well, he advanced education for all, science for all, and laws for all. So, yep. Any questions about that? Nope. All right. I know that it was a lot of information for you guys to receive. So let's do some really quick review with a Kahoot. I know all of you guys like Kahoots, right? All right. So let me stop my share and pull up the Kahoot for you guys. Give me a thumbs up when you can see the page. Yep. All right. Those who want to, you guys can join the Kahoot. So the game pin again is on top. And like last time, just go to www.kahoot.it, insert this game pin, and you'll be able to join our Kahoot. All right, I already see Camille in there. And please use your real name so I know who is who.
We couldn't.
Oh, is there any issues with it? David?
We are at China. Can we use that?
You can try. I'm not sure if China allows Kahoot, but because it's not anything special, you can try. Just go to www.kahoot.it.
Oh,
If not, you can just participate along. All right. I'll give you guys 3 to 4 more minutes to join the Kahoot, and we'll start. Yeah. So for anybody who wants to join, just go to the link on top and then enter the game pin or the pin you see there.
Sneak.
Can we start in 20 seconds?
Sure. I'm just waiting for people to join, and if I get, and I'll check again in around 2 minutes, and if everybody is in, I will start it.
Real name. Can we wait 1 minute? Okay, turn it on. Start. No, please.
Harvey, stop. So www.kahoot.it. So I can highlight it for you guys.
No, please. Yes.
Go to that link and you can join the
Oh,
Kahoot.
yes.
And
Just wait a minute.
yep, I'm waiting. Sorry, you guys, for the delay because there's some people that are new to this, right?
Need to go.
Does anybody have any trouble? Or
Yes, we have.
uh
不行，进不去。哦，来了。
Oh, yes, we can. Oh, yes, we can. Name. No. Name play.
3
Cat.
4
No. Is it?
game
so
P
you have
Oh,
to,
yes.
Yep.
3, 4, 1.
All right. So after David joins, we're going to start. And oh, sorry. Wilson, I don't see your name on here. Would you like to join us or not for this one?
Not for this one.
Okay. Yeah, that's completely fine. All right. If everybody's good, can I get a thumbs up? All right. Perfect. So let's start this Kahoot. So everybody knows the rules. You'll see 4 different answers or maybe a true or false on the screen. And then you have to press the same color or the same shape on your device. So you have to pay attention to my screen and the device at the same time. You guys ready? Let's start. So there's a total of 14 questions. First question, where was Napoleon Bonaparte born? It's a very small island off the coast of Italy. Yep, that is correct. So Bonaparte was not born in France. He was born in a very small island called Corsica that was eventually taken over by France. But still, he was born in Corsica. Great job, everybody, if you got it correct. All right. Next question. As I said, Napoleon wasn't called his actual full name before when he was born. So what was his name when he was born? And so not the name that is in French, but the name that is more Italian. That's correct. Yep. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. That was the small difference. All right. Good job. All right. Let's go next. What was the school that he went to? Remember, it's a school that you go there for the army. The school that he went to is called École Militaire. Great job. All right. Let's go to the next question. When did the French Revolution start? So remember the time period when he was living in, the 1700s, 1800s. What time frame was within when he was alive? Yep, correct. So he was the revolution started in 1789. Good job, everyone. So remember this building, it was also a prison. There were a lot of it was a prison, it was a castle, and there was a lot of different guns and a lot of different resources in them. What is this place called? Yes. So, yep, somebody put the Palace of Versailles. That is not wrong. That is not completely wrong either. But the Palace of Versailles wasn't stormed by everybody. It was actually stormed by really angry female farmers because of the allegedly saying of Marie Antoinette saying, "Let them eat cake." He was angry. The French female farmers were really angry that Marie Antoinette said that. So that's why they stormed the Palace of Versailles. But overall, it wasn't really storming. It was just them trying to carry Marie Antoinette out and make her answer for what she said. All right. Great job, everybody. So what did the Rosetta Stone did? As I said, it contained 3 languages, one of which historians already know. So what did they do with the other 2? Yeah, so that was a harder question I can see. And we can so within these 4 questions, we can do some process of elimination. It can't be the answer to the universe. It can't be the ancient Chinese language because the Rosetta Stone wasn't found in China. And yeah, it was actually the answer is ancient Egyptian languages because the 3 different languages contained on the stone helped historians understand what hieroglyphics means and what ancient Egyptian each character means. Yeah, I can see not a lot of people got that, but good job for all of those who did. So, what was Napoleon declared as? Well, he was coronated. And sorry for there's a bit of a spelling mistake within this quiz. If you guys can see that. Yep. So he was the emperor of Russia. Apologize to this quiz that there is a small mistake in the spelling of emperor. The spelling should be Emperor. Yep. So he wasn't the Tsar of France. Sorry, the Tsar of Russia because he defeated the Tsar of Russia. He isn't the Pope, and of course, the president didn't exist back then. All right, great job. Was Napoleon the first emperor of France? Yes or no? That's correct. Good job, everybody. So yeah, it is true. He was the first person to ever declare himself as an emperor. Therefore, he's the first emperor of France. All right, you can see Camille in the lead, Jasper following up. So who was in this alliance that we're talking about? Yeah, close. That was again a pretty difficult question because I didn't mention it for a long time. But yeah, the anti-French alliance was Russia, Austria, and Britain because they were afraid of France advancing out of Europe and taking over their own land. So did Napoleon successfully invade Russia? And for some context, the picture is of Mongols, and they're what we talked about last time as the only exception. So did Napoleon invade Russia? Yep. He unfortunately did not successfully invade Russia. And as I said, the Mongolians were the only ones that are really successful in invading and breaking all of the rules set by other military dictators and other military generals. So no, Napoleon did not successfully invade Russia. So as I said, Napoleon returned to power after his exile on Elba. What was that period called? We said it was called, I can give it to you in French again, le Cent Jours. What does that mean? Or what is that period called? Yeah. And again, that was a harder question again. So it wasn't called the Minute War because the Minute War is actually a reference to the English wars during the the Revolution and the of America, when they had a lot of Minutemen or people that can get ready and fight within a minute. So that's why it was called the Minute War. And the 100-year couldn't be right because not even Napoleon himself lived for 100 years. So yeah, the 100-day is correct. Where did the final battle of Napoleon take place? Is it Paris, Beijing, London, Waterloo? This was his final defeat, and that he lost to the Allies and was forced to exile to a very small island west of Africa. And that is correct. Waterloo is correct. All right, great job, everybody. Let's keep going. This was what I mentioned at the end of my presentation when I said Napoleon did some good. What was the good he did? What was the main focus of his plans for within France? What did he really think that should be a core central part of French culture? Yep, that is completely correct. Education. Napoleon really focused on education. He believed that education was really important to the key of expanding your country and expanding the wealth of the country. All right. So, what is this last question? What does met his Waterloo mean? And you can think back to what Waterloo did. After what happened when he fought at Waterloo? Yep. Met his Waterloo means that somebody suffered their final defeat and they're not able to come back from it. Third place, Jasper. Good job. Kai and Jimmy in second place. And congratulations, Camille, getting all of the questions right. All right. So that is the end of the Kahoot. Does anybody have any questions before we end off today's lesson? Any questions, concerns?
Can I stay with you just for like a few minutes?
Sure, you can ask any questions or anything you want. And for the rest of you guys, have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next week. Hope you learned something this week. And I'll see you next week for another history class. Bye, guys.